going on, YouTube universe? Welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, and today, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to hit pause and reflect once more on another round of AFL action. The semi-finals went down last weekend, and unfortunately, at least in my opinion, feel free to disagree, they were a bit of a letdown comparatively to the first week of finals. The first week gave us absolutely banging matchups, and heading into the semi-finals, I felt we were going to get exactly the same. We had Adelaide taking on Hawthorn. We had a Q clash for the first time in finals history. The hype was there, and it deflated so fucking fast it wasn't funny. Both teams that ended up walking out as winners from this weekend won so convincingly. It was almost one-sided for both of these games, and as a neutral supporter, it was a letdown. And I'm not at all, discrediting the work of the winners out of this week, but man, I expected a hell of a lot more. And that brings us to the ultimate question. What did we learn from the semi-finals? Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the round recap. The round opened on Friday night with Adelaide hosting Hawthorn at Adelaide Oval. 52,005 people packed out that stadium, and yet at the start of the game, you could hear a pin drop. No teams out on the field, just the crowd settling down, and it's not a sound, or absence of sound rather, that we are used to hearing, because we're used to hearing this Adelaide crowd up and about. And then as soon as Adelaide came out onto the field, the crowd lit up. It was electric as all fuck. It was ready and set. We were good to go. And then Hawthorn, back-to-back clearances, back-to-back goals. Adelaide against the ropes early. And I thought to myself, fuck, Hawthorn are just going to roll through here rampant. And although Adelaide did put up a little bit of a fight due to the back end of that quarter, it was still all Hawthorn. They commanded all that momentum, all of that presence. Everything that went right in this game fell right into the hands of the Hawks. And back-to-back weeks have seen Adelaide go down and eliminated. This is the first time since 1983 that a team has finished as the minor premiers on top of the ladder and has been bounced out of the finals in back-to-back weeks. Oh, I don't understand. Adelaide have been so anti-Adelaide over the last 2 weeks. It's a different feel and a different system that we have seen in place with this team. We have seen Adelaide throughout the course of the home and away season be very well drilled when it comes to bulleting that ball inside 50, hitting players like Darcy Fogarty, Tex Walker, Riley Thilthorpe, lace out. And yet we have witnessed an Adelaide team in the last 2 weeks that has seen fumbled chest marks, wayward kicking, not being able to hit a target inside 50. We've been given a lot more questions about this team than we have answers. One of which, can Adelaide win without a dynamic player like Isaac Rankin in their lineup? And I'm not just saying they can't win without Isaac Rankin because I don't want to single out one player, but he just adds so much X factor to their team. He gives their midfield an injection of speed. He is very crafty when he plays forward half of the ball. His use with the ball, connecting with those forwards inside 50, is a skill set that they have severely lacked during their finals campaign. And it's not just Isaac himself, but it is a player that can play that role. I don't think they have anybody on their list that plays synonymously like Isaac Rankin does, and I feel that has cost them severely during this final series, because what they have done more often than not over the last 2 weeks is they have just bombed the ball inside 50 and hoped that a Tex Walker, a Riley Thilthorpe, is good enough to clunk the ball and bring it down to ground, and it has let them down. Because while this season they have by all means been one of the best defensive teams in the competition, especially when it comes to interceptability, they have ran a strategy or game plan or whatever you want to call it with just bombing and hoping that has allowed defensive lines from Collingwood and Hawthorn to absolutely eat it up. And both of these backlines, Collingwood and Hawthorn, set themselves up for that intercept play. Players like Darcy Moore thrive on it. Players like Tom Barras, players like Josh Battle thrive on it. They just kept feeding into the hands of these defensive lines, and it absolutely tore them apart. It's no knocking Adelaide's defensive pressure, because I think Josh Worrell over the last 2 weeks of the finals has been absolutely huge. I mean, I think he had 33 disposals in this last game alone, which is huge for somebody who plays a key defensive position. But still, all that defensive work gets undone when the ball gets into the hands of the midfield and they're just kicking and hoping for the best. Tex Walker, complete letdown over the final series. Now, at the end of this game, he looked incredibly dejected, so I don't know whether or not he's calling time on his career. It definitely had an air of disappointment because he wanted to run deeper into the finals series and he's not going to do so. But it also just kind of looked like it was his last hurrah with this club and he didn't make it. He looked very down. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on things. It could very well mean that we have seen Tex Walker for the last time. But I just don't understand how a game plan that has seen them hit the top of the leaderboard by the end of the season become unraveled over the last 2 weeks and just completely thrown out the window. Jordan Dawson, in my opinion, is going to be a top 3 finish in this year's Brownlow medal. He has been absolutely insane this year. He was robbed of the All-Australian captaincy by an absolute mile. I still don't understand how they didn't give him that role. But he's been missing over the last 2 weeks of finals. When they needed someone to stand up, he's failed to do so. It is just mind-boggling that a team can get themselves in this position and then underperform so severely. It now begs the question, were they gifted too easy a season that has put kind of, I don't know how to explain it, kind of ill-conceived notions that they might be a little bit better than what they truly are? I don't know, because we've seen in previous years they have just missed finals on the back of some indecision from the AFL in those moments, and then the AFL has come out and said, oh, we got it wrong. So they've kind of been given a fixturing this year that, you know, kind of gave them a bit of an easier run, you know, more home games in Adelaide to kind of make up for the fact that they've been fucked in the past. So were they gifted too easy a run this year that has made a top of the ladder finish be a little bit more than what they're worth? I don't know. It's hard to kind of articulate, but I think, and I hope you guys at home can understand where I'm trying to go with it. It's just, it blows my mind. It really does. And on the flip side, Hawthorn, they have had to go the hard route this entire final series. They go play GWS in Sydney. They have a 42-point lead and almost choke it, and they manage to pull it back. They then, again, backs against the wall, go to Adelaide, and they absolutely monster them. And now they get to come home at the MCG to take on Geelong. This is going to be a mouth-watering prelim that we are getting this coming weekend. Absolutely huge. But I can't help but feel GWS are going to be absolutely ruining the fact that they lost to Hawthorn, because I can tell you right now, GWS, had they have beaten Hawthorn, I feel they would have rolled Adelaide. They would have been coming up against Geelong, and they know, because they've done it twice this year, that they can beat Geelong. And they could have been walking into a grand final. I can't help but feel there are a lot of Giants supporters right now that are going to be so fucking angry that they couldn't get past that first week. But looking at the match timeline just further compacts what I'm trying to get across here. This is just, it's so hard to believe that Adelaide just didn't put up any fight whatsoever. At quarter time, it was Hawthorn leading 4-4-28 to 3-2-20. 8 points, okay. Maybe we can get a shift in momentum in the second quarter. They led 6-7-43 to Adelaide's 3-6-24. Okay. Not 21 points. Let's kind of reassess. No, not 21. We're talking 19 here. Yeah, we're talking 19, because I can't math for the fucking life of me. But 19 points. Okay. Few goals. We can rein that back in the second half, surely. At three-quarter time, Hawthorn led 11-13, 79 to 7-7-49, and the final scoreline saw Hawthorn win 14-17, 101 to 10-7, 67. Hawthorn by 34 points. I just seriously cannot fathom just how Adelaide have mechanically broken down as bad as they did. Stats back it up. I mean, it was close with the disposal count. Hawthorn only defeated them by 25 disposals collectively around the ground. Adelaide were actually more efficient with disposal in hand. They were only 0.4 less efficient inside 50 than what Hawthorn were. They had 6 more free kicks, which doesn't really dictate much, but they still had a decent run from umpiring side of things. So Adelaide fans can't really sit there saying that they were out umpired and they were screwed. Further looking down the stats here, stoppages, hitouts, Hawthorn won. They also won the clearance battle, but it wasn't that big of a gap between. It was only, that's 7 hitouts, 6 clearances. It was contested possession where Hawthorn managed to get the bigger jump here. They had 31 more contested possessions. They only had 6 more uncontested possessions. It's so, Adelaide had more marks for the game as well, so they were still getting that intercept game going with Josh Worrell, with Mark Keane. But something that I've noticed with Mark Keane, and it's something I want to bring up, because a lot of people, when they looked at the All-Australian list this year, believe that Josh Worrell was hard done by. I personally believe he should have been in the squad this year. He made the 40-man squad, should have been in the final team. I would have had him over a couple of the players. I would have had him well over Josh Battle, for example, just to throw a name out there. Yet, a lot of people were saying Mark Keane was robbed. And when I just have a look at how Mark Keane has played the last 2 weeks, and you have a look through the year, and you start seeing the same things happen, I can understand why they kind of maybe overlooked him. When Mark Keane isn't intercepting the ball, and he is a strong intercept mark, don't get me wrong, but there is a lot of diving, there is a lot of over-exuberance when it comes to a push or a shove to try to draw a free kick. He panics a lot under pressure, and there was a lot of calls that were called back in this game where he had the ball and just blatantly threw the fucking thing. I'm a Richmond fan, so I wore the fact that at the back end of Alex Rance's career, he was diving and all that kind of stuff. But Mark Keane is making this just part of his repertoire too much. I've seen a lot of throwing the head back. I've seen a lot of a little bit of a shove and he'll dive forward. It's not a good look. And it's, I just wanted to get that out there. I just wanted to say that. Adelaide did not lead at all at this point. When you have a look at time in front, Adelaide is running a 0 time clock for 116 minutes and 46 seconds, the full duration of the game. This was all Hawthorn. They just rocked up. They knew what had to get done, and they got it done convincingly. And I feel I haven't been paying enough respect to Hawthorn. I honestly felt GWS were going to get the run of them because it was in Sydney. Because we know NG Stadium, GWS, they play it well. I thought the run and carry from half back to half forward is better run by GWS. And yet here Hawthorn is on the back end of a prelim against Geelong, 1 step away from making the grand final. Can Hawthorn win it from this point? I think they can. I really think they can. It is a backline that they have built that has stood tall over the last couple of weeks. It is a forward line where Jack Gunston has just kicked the biggest bag of his career. Mabior Chol starting to get into a little bit of form. Nick Watson is dynamic. Ginnivan was very quiet in this game, but still has the potential to break a game wide open. And I'm telling you right now, if Hawthorn make it to the grand final against Collingwood, put your money on Jack Ginnivan to win the Norm Smith, because when he comes up against Collingwood, he just goes to a whole new level. And funnily enough, I don't know whether this is a correct stat, but I believe Collingwood and Hawthorn have never met each other in a grand final before, which is huge. Because with a rivalry like Hawthorn and Collingwood, you would have thought it would have been based on, grand final losses and the heartbreak and everything else within it. But nope. Not at all. So this is a very interesting watch, because I actually feel it could be Collingwood versus Hawthorn on the last day of September. Absolutely huge. Breaking it down into an individual standpoint for the votes here, I wanted to throw out an honourable mention to Josh Worrell. I thought his game was absolutely superb. And I also want to touch on Josh Ward, who I feel is one of those, like, B-tier players for Hawthorn that has really flown under the radar. This kid is just developing into something so incredibly great. I can't wait to see him just hit the scene in this kind of way that he played this game and absolutely dominate the competition. But for the 3-2-1, I landed on 3 Hawthorn players, and I think it is very hard to argue against the efforts of these 3 men. The one vote I am giving to Sam Butler. I thought his defensive pressure was absolutely insane in this game. He had 15 disposals, 11 kicks and 4 handballs, 5 marks, 9 tackles, 226 metres gained, 2 goals, and 5 score involvements. The 2 vote I gave to Jack Gunston. His forward pressure, he just absolutely towed Mark Keane up. Now, Mark Keane traditionally gives a little bit of space to his opponent to try, and then he's really quick to shut it down. He gave Jack Gunston way too much space in this game, and it was really part of the undoing of Adelaide's defensive pressure, because they would get intercept marks from Josh Worrell, and, you know, they'd start moving the ball on, and then Hawthorn would get a turnover, and Jack Gunston, just like that, was so quick onto a lead and just broke Mark Keane all around the ground. He had 16 disposals, 13 kicks and 3 handballs, 7 marks, 265 metres gained, 5 goals, and 10 score involvements. And best on ground for me, in back-to-back weeks, a man that they are now starting to call Mr. September, which I think is a little bit premature, because we all know Dustin Martin is the real Mr. September, right? Jai Newcomb has really come into his own when Hawthorn play finals. If he can bring the level of consistency he has shown in this final series to a home and away season, this guy can go a long way to winning a Brownlow medal. Big call, maybe, but this is the second week in a row where he has put the midfield on his back and said, come on, boys, let's go for the ride. He had 28 disposals, 14 kicks and 14 handballs, 3 marks, 3 tackles, 8 clearances, 408 metres gained, 1 goal, and 10 score involvements himself. Since this game, we have seen Brodie Smith announce his retirement. I believe Murphy has been delisted after playing over 100 games for the club as well. I don't know where Adelaide go from here. They're linked to potentially maybe getting a Petrarca, maybe linked to a Clayton Oliver. I don't know whether a midfielder is the way for them to go. I feel they need a line-breaking small forward. They need somebody that just absolutely hits the ground running, and when a Thilthorpe, you know, spoils a mark, or a Fogarty spoils a mark, they've got somebody there to crumb at their feet. It's the big thing I feel they missed for this finals campaign. Hawthorn, however, move on to take on Geelong, and this is going to be, I feel, the bigger of the 2 prelims. I think we're going to see some records set. We could potentially see 90+ thousand at both of these prelims. We could push 100,000, I feel, at Geelong versus Hawthorn. It's going to be packed out. It's going to be huge. I cannot wait to dig into this weekend's 2 prelims, because I'm telling you right now, a lot of people are saying that as neutrals, we don't want these prelims to happen, but I'm so fucking excited for them. The second semi-final was played at the Gabba, the first Q clash in finals history. Brisbane taking on the Gold Coast in front of a crowd of 36,628. Great turnout to watch these 2 teams go head-to-head. Unfortunately, just like the semi-final prior, it was incredibly one-sided after a single quarter of football. In the first quarter, we were dished up something that I thought was going to be an absolute great watch. There was only 1 point the difference between these 2 clubs. However, I feel it was a combination of lack of finals experience and exposure for Gold Coast, as well as potentially putting everything on the line and gassing themselves out against Fremantle the week prior. That being said, I said it in my tipping video last week. The Gold Coast had already exceeded expectation. They had not just made the finals for the first time in their club history, but they won their very first final as well. So anything that happened after that point in time was just the cherry on the cake. Obviously, Damien Hardwick and the club, you know, the Gold Coast as an organisation, the players, the staff, they're disappointed that they got to a semi-final and they got bounced out, as any organisation would be. But they've already started to identify They're going to hit the trade period hard. They're going to hit the draft as hard as they can. They've got access to some academy players that can bolster themselves up. They do have talk about some players potentially leaving. Sam Flanders could potentially be on the way out. I do believe he has turned around and told the club he wants to have a look elsewhere. Malcolm Rosas has identified he wants to leave. Richmond and Sydney leading the charge as a Richmond man. I would love to land Malcolm Rosas because he would add another level of dynamic to our forward structure, just adding some speed. It's just something I feel Richmond really lack. But they've come so far this year, and they've now proven to the competition that they're a team to be trifled with. I feel they come back with a vengeance next year, and I definitely see a potential top 6 finish for the Gold Coast. I really do. As much as it pains me to say it, they can be a team that now, you know, having this finals exposure, knowing that they can get the job done, could become infinitely more dangerous moving forward. But it was Brisbane, the experience of their players, knowing how finals work, just owning the moment, got the job done quite convincingly, in the end running away with a 53-point win. As a neutral supporter, as unfortunate as it sounds, I just found myself becoming very disinterested in this game because of how one-sided it became. And for something that was touted as a huge final, you know, the first Q clash in finals history, it was very lackluster, just like the Adelaide Hawthorn game. And again, that is no, you know, knocking Brisbane. That's no knocking Hawthorn and the wins that they had. It's just, it didn't reach the hype levels that I felt this round should have had. Breaking down the match timeline, Brisbane led by a singular point, 3-5-23 to 3-4-22 at quarter time. At halftime, it was 9-6-60, leading 5-5-35. At three-quarter time, game well and truly out of hand by then 12-10-82, leading 5-9-39, and the final score line was 14-6-100, defeating 6-11-47. You could argue, okay, the Gold Coast could have stemmed the flow a little bit if they were accurate, but if Brisbane were more accurate, they could have just absolutely blown this out by a bigger margin. This makes Brisbane very scary, I feel, heading into this game against Collingwood this coming weekend, because while I feel Collingwood are primed to win this game, I really do, Brisbane have been a much better performing team away from the Gabba. So the fact that they have won this game so convincingly at home at a ground where more often than not this year they have lost becomes very, very scary against a team that has had a week off and then comes back against, you know, this team. You could argue it both ways. Collingwood and Geelong coming off of breaks heading into the prelim could give them the advantage because both of these teams they're coming up against have had to run back-to-back weeks. This is now their third final in a row they've had to play, whereas both of these clubs have had a bit of a break. But it could be the complete opposite. Having the break could mean that they're a little bit behind the 8 ball against teams that have had more exposure, more game time, have had, you know, time to make certain things work. Still sets up a very good game. Collingwood versus Brisbane is going to be absolutely huge. We are primed with really 2 great prelims here, and you can't knock the 4 teams that have made it. 50 prelims have been played since the turn of the decade, or whatever the fuck they're talking about. Out of the last 50 prelims that we have seen played, 44 of those 50 have featured these 4 teams. Huge. That's why some people are saying that it's bad for neutral supporters because we're seeing the same teams. But hey, if they're good enough to be there, they're good enough to deserve to be there. That's my take anyway. The big thing for Brisbane this coming week is the fact that Lachie Neale was all but written off, but he has given himself hope that if they can make the grand final, he could be a chance to get up. And I feel that's the type of player he is. He just wants to be in the trenches with his team. If they make the grand final, I would love to see him get up. But there's a lot of talk that he could potentially be wanting to finish his career back in Western Australia. And we're not talking about Fremantle here. We're talking about potentially going to the West Coast. Huge news to be handballed around given where Brisbane are at with their season right now. And we already know Brisbane's only going to get better, because we've got Sid Draper wanting to head up there to head their ruck stocks, and he would become, I feel, their number 1 ruck. And you've got Jordan Ridley wanting to join their defensive kind of line. You've got Oscar Allen, who's going to come over and join their forward line. Brisbane are starting to become a bit of a juggernaut. And if they don't make the grand final and win it this year back-to-back, I definitely put my money on Brisbane winning it next year once they bolster their stocks a little bit. Looking at the stats for this game, it was very convincingly, as the blowout suggests, very one-sided. I mean, Brisbane won the disposal count 374 to 318. They had 11 more inside 50s for the game. They only ran 0.1% more effective around the ground, but when it came to efficiency inside 50, they cleared them by 20%. Huge. They had 6 less free kicks for the game as well, and I feel the Gold Coast were getting a lot of free kicks early that were very line ball, and it kind of made me a little bit disinterested in that way as well. The Gold Coast surprisingly dominated the hitouts, but lost the clearances very convincingly by 18. Contested possessions were close. Uncontested is where they got absolutely killed. Brisbane led that 236 to 190. And that's just how Brisbane work. We know Brisbane like to turn the ball over. They set momentum on their own terms. They shift the ball around. Make sure that they slow things down. If they want to speed it up, you're running by Brisbane's momentum. This was a game that I feel went from a Q clash to just setting Brisbane up for a premiership tilt here. It really turned into a moment where Brisbane were that far ahead. It's like, okay, let's see what we can really get rolling here. And they got their systems back in place. This is why I feel Brisbane are so scary heading into this weekend. It is going to be a huge game. Absolutely sensational by Brisbane. Sensational. It was such a full-body performance from them that I just, I can't discredit them at all. Brisbane are back in town, baby. They're not to be taken lightly here. I mean, as much as I feel Collingwood are going to have their number this coming weekend, I really might have to sit back and reassess my options, because the more I think about it and the more I look at the stat line here, it just keeps confirming to myself that Brisbane could very well go back-to-back. We could see a three-peat. We really could, because they're only going to get better next year. And as a destination club, they're only going to keep building on that. It's huge. Huge. Anyway, breaking down the votes for this game. Honourable mentions, I do have a few of them. Even though they were monstered out of the game, I do want to touch on Matt Rowe's performance. I thought he was absolutely huge in this game for the Gold Coast. Kai Lohmann shaves off the head. Not the skinhead kind of look I expected from a Brisbane player. He was probably the last one I was expecting to get rid of the locks, but he had a huge game. And Dane Zorko off of halfback again. Just absolutely sensational. I do feel Dane Zorko was stiffed of a All-Australian Blazer this year. I would have had him in that defensive lineup ahead of Jordan Clark, ahead of Bailey Dale. But the three boys I've landed on for Brisbane here, again, just like the game before, cannot argue the influence of these three. The one vote I'm giving to Jared Berry. He had 27 disposals, 16 kicks and 11 handballs, 8 marks, 3 tackles, 1 clearance, 668 metres gained, 1 goal, and the 8 score involvements. The 2 vote I'm giving to Josh Dunkley. The defensive efforts of this bloke, seriously, absolutely astounds me that they don't try to shut this man's influence out, because he had the 20 disposals, 7 kicks and 13 handballs, 5 marks, 18 tackles. 18 tackles. Look, when I go back to the team stats, get your head around this, okay? For the game, Gold Coast as a team laid 56 tackles. 56. With 18 tackles, Josh Dunkley almost laid a third, close enough to a third of what Gold Coast managed as a collective team. That is fucking insane to me. Also, pairs off with 4 clearances, only 62 metres gained, but with a lot of handballs more than kicks. That's going to happen. He had 5 score involvements as well. Best on ground for me, though, is a man who went and won the Norm Smith last year. The week prior, in the first round, was a player that I might have overlooked for votes a little bit because they were in a losing outfit, but he has backed it up with another solid performance, and that is Will Ashcroft. He had 28 disposals, 15 kicks and 13 handballs, 3 marks, 4 tackles, 8 clearances, 466 metres gained, 2 goals and 11 score involvements. The absolute complete package. I feel a lot of people have discredited them because they've been a little bit shaky this year, and you can't knock people for going down that route, right? But they have hit their straps at the right time, and if you think they're just going to lay down and take it easy against Collingwood this weekend, you'd be rudely mistaken. This game that we're going to get between these two clubs is going to be absolutely insane. When tallying all the votes up, it is really easy to point out who's leading because this is the only player that has gone back-to-back best on grounds for myself. Jai Newcomb is leading with 6 votes. The next best is a handful of players all on 3 votes collectively. So that is going to be very interesting heading into the game against Geelong, because you'd think someone like an O'Sheen Mullen or a Tom Atkins is going to play a negating shutdown role on Jai Newcomb. Can he overcome and break away from that? Because I feel that is going to be the make or break for Hawthorn in that game. We'll have to wait to see. There is only one more thing to do, ladies and gentlemen, before we can officially recap the round, and that is to announce my team of the week for the semi-finals, which was very line ball for me, because even though obviously the losing teams lost rather convincingly, when it came to positional kind of, selections here, they stood out more often than not. And regardless of whether a team loses or wins when there's only 2 games of football played, there are going to be players selected from those losing teams in the team of the week if they performed well in that role. And that's what makes selecting these teams and these, types of things that I do great talking points, as I've always pointed out with you guys at home, because it's my personal opinion. So if you agree, if you disagree, let's talk about it in the comments down below. But with that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, here is my team of the week for Finals Week 2, the semi-finals. In my back line, I have Josh Worrell and Darcy Gardner in the back pockets, and Harris Andrews at full back, with Dane Zorko and Rory Laird on the half-back flanks, and James Sicily at centre half-back. Across the centre, I have Hugh McCluggage and Josh Weddle on the wings, with Will Ashcroft in the centre. In my forward line, I have Kai Lohman and Logan Morris in the forward pockets, and Jack Gunston at full forward, with Zach Bailey and Sam Butler on the half-forward flanks, and Riley Thilthorpe at centre half forward. In the ruck, we have Lloyd Meek, Josh Dunkley is ruck rover, and Jai Newcomb in at rover. My interchange boasts Jared Berry, Josh Ward, Nick Watson, and Blake Hardwick. Matt Rowell is our sub of the week, and coach of the week goes to Sam Mitchell. And that is it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. The round has been officially recapped. The next time we return to a video, it'll be my tipping video for the prelim, which is going to go down tomorrow morning, ahead of the first prelim. I am so excited. Geelong Hawthorn, Collingwood Brisbane. We are set up, regardless of what people say, with 2 huge prelims. Come back and find out who I'm going to tip, who I'm going to think I'm going to win. We're going to deep dive. We're going to have a good look about it. And then next week, we get to touch on those prelims in another round recap before heading into the grand final. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be great. I cannot wait to take in another round of football, especially with 2 games that present absolutely brilliant hitouts. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. And as always, I will catch you guys next time.